Welcome to Undertold by CM, where we tell the jaw-dropping details of Black history you might not know. Hey, do me a solid, no matter what app you're on, what other app you're listening to this on, can you do me a quick review? I don't want to sound thirsty, but I am not too proud to beg. You feel me? Just please do that. That would be great. Anyway, yes, it's Crystal Marie. I'm here, and I'm back with, as always, an amazing guest and co-host. The policy here is I write the bios. I don't care what you have to say about yourself. I write them. You do have the chance to refute any claims I make at the end. Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. So today's fabulous guest is Brandon Grate. Brandon is a lifestyle photographer, a communications expert, and he doesn't say this, but I think he's a model. If you check out his Instagram, you'll find a very handsome man with the perfect smile. He's looking off into the distance in Lyon, France, all these exotic places. I think he's at least good enough for a JCPenney catalog.
Thank you.
And here's the thing. Brandon, it's a shame that we are not filming this standing up because Brandon is a tall glass of water. I was doing a little digging while researching you, and I have two quick questions. As a self-proclaimed Golden Girls fan, do you prefer the original theme song or the R&B remix?
The original theme song.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
And as someone who was the reason why that show is my favorite show is because my grandfather started that. So the original is always going to be what I need to hear.
Yeah, you're a purist. I love that. I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but it seems that you ripped a mole off someone's back. Tell me more about that.
Oh, gosh.
Don't need any gruesome details, but tell me a little bit more about your experience ripping moles off people's backs.
I was in middle school.
Okay,
And,
that's an important detail.
you're childish, you're young, you're running down the hallway. It was this girl. I touched her, I grazed her back, I pulled her bra strap. And then when I pulled her bra strap, it ripped the mole off of her back.
That seems like a loosey-goosey mole.
I had to go tell the teacher that, he ripped this mole off my back. And she was that particular teacher's pet. So, of course, that teacher did not like me. So,
Is she okay?
Who cares? Who really cares?
Brandon Grate, everybody. Is there anything? Proud mole ripper. Is there anything I missed about you that you want to share?
No, I think you nailed the head. You nailed it on the head. Excuse me.
Okay.
The model is relative, ladies and gentlemen. That is relative. However, I will say,
No.
this year I have gotten that I should get into that more than I ever have in my entire life.
You really should. You have such a gift for it. There are a few times when I see you on my feed and I don't immediately recognize that it's you. And I'm just like, ooh, who is this? And I'm like, is that Brandon? Oh my gosh. Like, it looks like an ad.
Oh, thank you.
You're really good at it. Anyway. All right. We always start with a random fun fact. It can literally be anything. What do you have for us?
My random fact is that high heels were actually initially for men, not women. They were for men who, like, if they were, for stirrups. So, like, riding a horse or whatever, that's what the heel.
Oh, yeah. So you can get into the.
Mm-hmm. And then I think
When did it change?
I think for men it was the 16th century, and then I think women popularized it starting in the 18th century. I think.
Oh, that's interesting. Bring it back. Do I want men to wear heels?
I mean, I'm 6'6".
You don't need heels.
And I wear a boot with a little bit of a platform, and sometimes I'm
Yeah.
6. Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for that fun fact. Anyway, it is June. So you know what that means. It's Pride Month. And I immediately could think of no better person for us to learn about today than Bayard Rustin. And before I decided on this, I asked, just for the past few weeks or so, I've been asking people, coworkers, maybe someone I know from church, some of my neighborhood family members, have you ever heard of Bayard Rustin? Almost every single person was like, who is that? Which I was a little bit surprised by because there's a very famous movie called Rustin that came out in 2023 featuring Coleman Domingo. What about you, Brandon? As of right now, what do you know about Bayard Rustin?
Well, the biggest thing is the March on Washington, and I also knew that he was a gay man who was basically, in no uncertain terms, he was kind of like under the radar. Like people started to find out about his sexuality, and then he started to work for these political activists under like wraps. And I thought it was very interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I guess for his time, he was openly gay. I mean, he wasn't, there was no like pride flag, I don't think, for
Right.
him to wrap himself in. But I think most people that knew him knew he was gay or that there was something like mysterious about him. A lot of people said he had a very sensual energy, a very sexual energy. And women had crushes on him, men had crushes on him. People just didn't really know what to do with it. But he was really fortunate to be raised in a household where like, he told his mom, and his mom was actually his grandmother. He was raised by his grandmother, but I always think of her as his mom because she was like 40. And she basically told him, yeah, you got to do what you got to do. And I'm skipping way ahead, but this is just, I'm just so impressed by her progressive view at this time. She said, my advice to you is involve yourself with people who have as much to lose as you do. That's my biggest piece of advice that I have for you. Is like, don't be out here dealing with someone who's going to get you caught up and then they don't care because it doesn't mean anything to them, but you have a lot on the line. So I thought that was interesting advice. It wasn't like, pray the gay away. It was just like, yeah, you are who you are.
Acceptance.
Yeah. You know, and as a mom of three sons who, Brandon, you've had the fortune, misfortune, whatever you want to call it.
Fortunate.
You've
Fortunate.
literally seen them grow up.
Yes.
Um,
They are adorable.
it's hard to I feel like as a mom, you just know.
Mhm.
Like, I can't imagine not knowing. In fact, my oldest son, also the co-host of this podcast on our kids episodes, I feel like maybe I overkilled the like, love is love. Like I'm constantly telling him, you could be with whoever you want to be. But anyway, I was getting ready to go to a friend's wedding, a gay couple. And I said, Uncle Denzel and Uncle Brooks are getting married. And he was like, okay. And I was like, you know, you can marry whoever you want, just like them. He was like, Mom, I know, I know. And then he said, I've been thinking about it though. I think I'm just going to go traditional. I was like, what? He was like, yeah, I'm probably just going to marry a woman. It just seems easier. I was like,
Sounds like your child though. He's so bright.
I was
So
like,
bright and so matter of fact about it actually.
and it was just and it's just I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just leave it there. Okay, back to Bayard Rustin.
Okay.
So everyone knows about the March on Washington, but once you know a little bit about how he grew up in his life, it really helps you understand how he came to be that guy.
Mhm.
He was born in 1912 in Westchester, Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And for much of his childhood, he had someone in his life who he thought was his older sister, but really that was his mom. So basically, his mom got pregnant by this guy who was no good, and his grandparents, his mother's mother, who was again, she was just 40 years old. They decided that they were just going to raise him. So they were essentially his mom and dad, and they were great. Bayard Rustin later said that they were the perfect couple. They acted like high school sweethearts their whole life. And yeah, he grew up in a really secure, warm household. His grandparents were like the cool kids on the block. Everyone knew them. They had a million kids, I think like 12. Um, and his grandfather slash dad was a caterer and he had access to all these wealthy white families. And so they always had a lot of food. They had this huge house and it was basically like the cool house in the neighborhood.
Mhm.
Everyone would come, the black people, not everyone, but the black folks would come to their house.
Right.
Um, did you guys have was there like a cool house in your neighborhood? Was it your house?
Oh. So I don't know if there was necessarily a cool house, but I would
Mhm.
say that I was very fortunate to have a dad who was very active in the community because
Yeah.
he's an electrician and he always had a side business along with his actual work. And so we knew a lot of people. Everyone knew who he was in our community. So it made
Yeah.
a cool house, but it was the house everybody knew lived there.
Yeah. Oh my god, how cool will it be, like, for your can he fix stuff now? Is he like a handy person?
My father,
Yeah.
he is, he still I mean, my father retired a couple years ago and from his actual like 9 to 5 electrician,
Yeah.
but he always had a side electrician business. And now that he's officially retired from that, he works more now than he did when he worked the actual job.
His side hustle.
Yeah, I mean, but he
Oh my
loves it,
god.
and I don't want him to stop it. You know, when your parents get older, you're like, okay, you need to slow down just a little bit because you're not 20 or 30 anymore. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm like, if it keeps you going and it keeps you sharp, why am I gonna stop you?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't break anything,
Knock
why
on wood, it
not?
never has.
Oh, man, I'm so jealous. Well, my mom's family, she has 8 brothers. They're all pretty handy, but,
Oh,
yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll have some handy my kids will be handy. I'm working on it. So, in this part of Pennsylvania, there were a lot of Quakers.
mhm,
So the family grew up
mhm,
in an AME church,
mhm.
but his mom, who went to Quaker school, she was really influenced by the Quakers, because she'd been educated by them. The Quakers, they're known for being these peace-loving, they were abolitionists, they were anti-war, all that stuff. So, it's no surprise that that stuff will come up for him later.
Mhm.
But his mom was one of the first members of the NAACP, one of the earliest chapters. So she was raising all those kids. She was an activist. And because they had that cool house, whenever an activist or a civil rights leader came to town, they would stay with them. So he grew up in a house where Mary McLeod Bethune would spend the night,
Oh,
W.B. Du
wow.
Bois, all these folks just stayed in their house when they would pass through town. So in their neighborhood, it was very segregated.
Mhm.
And his elementary school was a black elementary school, but, and I think people always talk about how, yes, there was a lot of downsides to segregation, yeah, less resources, but also you had such community because you were all together.
Right.
And in his elementary school, they learned about resistance and they learned about Black folks fighting the power. One of his teachers, Helena Robinson, who was a Howard graduate, so I love that fun fact. She would have them go to old Quaker houses and check out all the places that runaways would hide on the Underground Railroad. So
Oh, wow.
that was his elementary school upbringing, which is pretty cool.
Mhm.
You're from South Carolina.
I am.
Georgetown?
Correct.
What was your understanding of Black history? What did you learn in school? Was it
Um,
like Martin
I
Luther
mean,
King?
yeah, I mean, it was the typical. I hate to say typical because that
Mhm.
sounds bad. That sounds like it
No,
doesn't
I know
make
what you
sense, right?
mean.
But it's the typical, African American figures that you see, like the popularized, the Martin Luther,
Yeah.
the Malcolm X's, the Madam C.J. Walkers of the
Oh,
world.
you learned about Malcolm X?
Hmm.
That's pretty cool.
Like touch on it. Like you
Yeah.
really had to go and research because I was one of those.
Yeah.
'Cause I was always inquisitive. I think that's a Gemini in me. So you just go
Mhm.
and see like, oh, who is this person and what was their story? So things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not I certainly didn't learn about Bayard Rustin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but he sounds like he had a pretty robust situation. But then by the time he got to high school,
Mhm.
there weren't enough Black high schoolers, so it wasn't segregated. They all went to school together.
Okay.
Now, even though this city was segregated, there was a lot of discrimination.
Mhm.
Bayard Rustin was that guy. Like he won their highest oratory award. He earned letters in track and football. He
Oh,
wrote poetry for the school magazine. He was a lead actor in all the plays. He was in student government. And he was one of the commencement speakers at his graduation.
oh,
So, yeah, I mean, he was definitely
you look
like
layered.
I know, right? Like, he was I mean, and I'm gonna share some pictures. I'll see if I can find some. I mean, I saw a lot in the documentary. He was very handsome. Like,
Yes.
he was just, like, a striking, good-looking, tall not as tall as you. We all can't be Brandon. But there were just certain things that he noticed. So, if he wanted to practice football the spaces would be closed to colored folks and he couldn't go. So he knew early on like that, yes, he achieved great things. And even though the entire city, white and black, knew who he was
Mhm.
and he had, a fan base basically, there still were just things that he just couldn't do as a
Right.
black person. So he graduates and in 1932 he earned a music scholarship to Wilberforce, which I learned was apparently the first school for Negro students. And he sang in their quartet. He
Mhm.
kind of reminds me of Paul Robeson in that he just randomly is like really good at sports, but also at music, but also he's a nerd. Like maybe that was just what people were doing back then.
Well, I think, you didn't have like when you think about the world now, kids grew up on tablets and iPhones. Back then, to know anything, you had to read. So people were very smart. And I'm sure in his household, his mother and father definitely like,
He
hey,
ain't playing no
we
games.
have these people coming here. You need to know something. So it
Mhm.
was just ingrained in his life and his upbringing.
I feel and I don't know that it's a good or a bad thing. I feel like now people really have like a lane and that's like
Their thing.
their lane. So he's at Wilberforce. You know, there's all these like murky details about why he moves from here to there.
Mhm.
I have a feeling, and it's kind of implied in the book that I read. Um, that when he would engage in homosexual activity or something would happen, then there would be an issue and then he would have to leave and go somewhere else. I don't exactly know what happened, but for whatever reason, he ended up leaving there and going to Cheney State, which was much closer to home.
Mhm.
And there he was mentored by the school's president, which was really cool. And he started teaching at his hometown elementary school at the same time. And that is where he formally became a Quaker. So he'd always known about Quakers. His mom was kind of a Quaker, but this is where he decided, I'm with the Quakers. Those are my peoples.
Cool.
And he started to learn more about like the anti-war movement and being, a pacifist. And but then in 1937, he left there and he moved to New York City. That's where his sister lived and where he had frequently visited. And this was also around the time where he started to really explore his sexuality. Like I said, he talked to his mom about it. She said, "Be careful who you associate with." But they accepted him. They never tried to make him change who he was.
I love that.
Yeah. Um, Also, by the way, and this will be relevant very soon, I'm wearing my shirt from Pose, which is one of my favorite shows of all time,
Mhm.
um, featuring the mother at a drag event. And when he moved to New York, he had access to drag ball. Have you ever been to a drag ball?
Well, yeah. Wait a minute. I don't know if it was called a. Well, yeah, actually, yeah, I have, yeah. Because
I've been to,
I had to think if they actually called it a ball that I went to, but yes,
yeah.
yeah.
I went to a dinner. It was like a drag dinner where they sang and walked around and stuff, but it wasn't a ball. I need
Okay.
to go to a ball. But anyway, when he moved to New York, he got to see all that rent parties, cabarets, clubs, Greenwich Village, and he also joined a chorus. He was in a musical featuring Paul Robeson, who we just mentioned.
Mhm.
So he's still figuring out where he's at. I mean, you're an elementary school teacher here, then you're singing on Broadway over here. He's kind of just figuring out where he's at.
Yeah.
And when he was in school, he had done, a lot of pacifist work, just speaking about nonviolence and being opposed to war. So he already had some of those ideas percolating. He admires men and women,
Yeah.
black and white. His biographer describes him as having the lean, muscular body of a track star, large, dark brown eyes, caramel colored complexion that demanded attention and won admirers. It's like, oh, do you have a crush?
He was very much so you could tell in his prime. Yeah. That was, yeah.
Yeah, in his prime, he was that guy. So this is the time where he joins the Young Communist League. And this is something that ends up following him for the rest of his life. It becomes a whole issue. He was protesting with them. Um, a variety of things. And he traveled across New York to help set up groups, little communist groups across different colleges. And they actually, at the time, were really in supportive of racial justice. And really, I think a lot of Black people at this time were drawn to the communists because they were one of the few people that were saying, we're all comrades, no matter your color. And, if you live in a society that's says they're a democracy, but is treating you unfairly, like I can certainly understand the appeal of the Communist Party. But in 1941, when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, and the Communist Party was like, all right, all right, all right. Like the racial justice stuff, we're gonna have to put it on pause and focus on fighting against fascism. Then he was like, never mind, nah, I'm out. So he left the Communist Party at that time. But it's always gonna plague him, following him like he's a communist, he's a commie, no matter, whatever happens. So I always was taught that Luther King was kind of the guy who came up with the whole idea of nonviolence. I did not know that it was, I mean, I knew about Gandhi, but I thought it was really MLK that brought it to the United States, when
Mhm.
in reality, as early as the 1930s,
Mhm.
Black leaders were studying Gandhi, and many of them even traveled to India to learn more about nonviolent civil disobedience. And one of those people is Bayard Rustin. So he actually planned a trip to India, and he was gonna meet Gandhi, but Gandhi was assassinated, but he still went and he met with the leaders who worked with him, and he learned all about that stuff, which will come in handy because he ended up being an advisor to Martin Luther King and teaching Martin Luther King in the '50s all of what he learned about how to enact nonviolence. I think people think that nonviolence, civil disobedience, nonviolence is just showing up and smiling even though people are beating you up, but it's actually a very specific way of being, and you have to be trained to do it right. You have to be trained not to flinch when someone is beating you over the head with a broom handle. And I don't know, I got that training in me. I don't know, but
I don't think I do. Mhm.
I don't really see too many people putting their hands on you though. I just-
True.
I
True.
just- like,
I would hope you would know better than that, but,
yeah, I
yeah.
just don't feel like that would be a smart move.
No.
So like I mentioned, in the 30s and in the 40s, or actually in 1941, he joined the Fellowship of Reconciliation. That is this Christian pacifist organization. 1941, what's happening? World War II. World War II was this is a weird way of saying it, but it was the most popular of the wars that we've ever had. It was the only war that everyone was like, yeah, we should be in this war. It's not like Vietnam or right now what's happening in Iran. People were like, yeah, this is for a good cause and we should do this. So it was kind of a hard time to be in an anti-war group because people were like, well, you're not patriotic. But Bayard was on that. He was inspired by Gandhi. And so we all know about Rosa Parks in 1950s and how she refused to get up from her seat. But I think most people know she wasn't the first person to do that. People have been doing this for a long time. But there was an incident in 1942 for Bayard Rustin where he did something similar. So this is the story as he recalls it. I was riding in a bus. He's on a bus trip from Louisville to Nashville. He was wearing a red necktie. It was hot and I had it open and it was dangling. And as I boarded the bus, a white woman was sitting with a child on her lap. And the child, as I was jiggling for my ticket and my tie was flying and my bags were going, and the child reached over and grabbed my tie. And the mother hit it and said, "Don't touch a nigger." I had not seen this kind of thing before. So I went in the back and I sat down and I began doodling in the back seat all by myself. And all of a sudden, something began to happen. Next to me was a Negro couple who had a box with chicken in it who was having the best time on earth. Honestly, a box of chicken does sound like a good time. And I said, how many years are we going to let that child be misled by its mother that if we sit in the back and we're having fun, the whites, in a way, have the right to say, but they like it in the back. I vowed then and there I was never going through the South again without either being arrested or thrown off the bus or protesting. So that isn't where it ends. He then decides to move back to the section that's reserved for whites. And he explains to the driver that his conscience would not allow him to obey an unjust law. Finally, the driver called the police, and when Rustin still refused to move, the 4 officers proceeded to beat him in front of the other passengers. Hustled into the back of a police car, he found himself shaking with nervous strain as the police verbally abused him on the way to the station. Once there, they forced him through a gauntlet. So basically, he's walking through this aisle of people that are just beating him up. Um, they tossed me from one to the another like a volleyball, ripping his clothes along the way. But throughout the entire ordeal, Rustin maintained a Gandhian posture of refusing to fight back physically, attempting to communicate with his assailants, and holding out the religious grounding of his disobedience. Mystified by the strange behavior, the police captain said, "Nigger, you're supposed to be scared when you come here." And they left saying, "I think he's crazy." In the end, he emerged rumpled, but he had small victories, and I think they didn't even charge him, and he eventually left. Um, but yeah, he once he got this Gandhi stuff in his system, he was just like, "Let's go."
Yeah.
Um,
Which
I
is
mean, that was in 1941. That was way before some of the more famous boycotts. So he was recruited, like I mentioned, to the Fellowship of Reconciliation, which was a mostly white pacifist group, and Black populations were not. Well, it wasn't that they didn't care about pacifism and anti-war messages. It's more so we had our own stuff going on at home, and that's what we were focused on. And so the leader of FOR, this guy named AJ Must, who was Rustin's mentor, father figure, he was like, I need you to help me get Black folks on board. And so Rustin was able, because Rustin could sing, so he would get down there and he would sing spirituals. He was just such a dynamic speaker. And they launched CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, which is within the Fellowship of Reconciliation. That was really with the goal of teaching Black populations about how nonviolence and, pacifism can also support racial justice. So that was way back in 1942. What are you thinking so far?
this man was very accomplished, but it's his diligence and dedication.
Mhm.
It's the way that I think his robust history kind of led
Mhm.
him down a path of awareness because he was obviously hyper aware of
Yep.
like even from childhood. So I just think he was never going to be someone that was going to be a bystander to what
Yeah.
was expected, right? Like he was always going to push the envelope and fight for equality. So I mean I just think this was destined for him, and his Learning all
Yeah.
these things about him is insane, you know?
So your dad's an electrician. What did your mom do?
So my mom worked for Clemson University, actually.
Ooh, is she still there?
No, she retired. So my mom is
Could you have gone to Clemson for free?
no, that was not a thing. It was her first job ever, and it's the only job she ever worked in her life, and she retired early. So my mom literally retired before she was 50. And then she was like she wasn't working for maybe like a couple months, and then because she was the only one that had ever done her role for 28 years, 27 years, whatever it was, they she was, I mean, literal the interworkings of her world and her job.
She was the system.
Correct. So everything funneled through her. So when she left, they were like, "Hey, we don't really want to hire anybody else because how could we teach someone 28 years of what you do?"
Yeah.
She worked 4 days a week, and then she was off on Fridays, and then she officially retired. I believe it was like she was 58 or 59 years old, but she had legally retired when she was like 48 or 49.
You know what? I didn't even know until I don't remember when I learned this, that Clemson was a public university.
I don't think I knew that. Did I know that?
It is, right? Let me see. Clemson University. It's a land grant university. What does that mean?
Because it's an agricultural school.
Oh,
So
it's a public school though. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a public land grant research university.
yeah.
Okay. So that explains why she was able to retire and get like state benefits, I guess. I'm assuming.
I'm happy for her because, now that she is, retired the last couple years, she has been traveling a lot more. She just came back from a Mediterranean cruise. She was in Rome and
Ooh.
Spain and France and all of that. She called me from Mallorca on my birthday. I was all right, girl, live your life.
So the reason I asked is because your dad was an electrician,
Mhm,
but he also had this entrepreneurial
mhm,
side to him.
mhm.
And then your mom worked in I was just wondering, did that have any influence on what you ended up doing? Because I'm thinking about Bayard and like how, I mean, his parents, his mom
Mhm.
certainly had influence in who he did, but I'm just wondering, what do you think that they did? How did that impact who you are?
I think my parents both have really strong work ethics.
Mm-hmm.
My
Yeah.
dad specifically, and humility was just such a big thing in my childhood,
Yeah.
like watching them. But my dad, I mean, he would work he would go to work at like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. He'd get off at like 4:30. When he get home, my dad always has a hustle. Like even in my like
Yeah.
younger years, outside of work, he would clean cars on the weekend. He would do his electric jobs. He would do this, he would do that. And it's just like he was always funneling some money through the scene. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. Like, and you
Yeah.
just begin to realize that is how I need to be. I need to work hard to have anything in this life. I need to follow in his footsteps. Not that it was a natural thing that they told me you have to do this or you have to do that,
You
but you
saw
just
it.
you just watch them and you're like, that is what I want to emulate. And so that was what it was for me.
Yeah, because you have a couple career situations
Yeah.
happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's fun to do that.
So, this is when we start to really get into how he starts to shift
Mhm.
primarily from really speaking on the pacifism, which was a very white centric movement, over into civil rights. And he meets this guy who I love, who I think deserves his own episode, A. Philip Randolph. Now, A. Philip Randolph, who was portrayed really well, by the way, in the Rustin movie by what's his name? Glenn Turnley? I don't remember. He was on a different world. But
Oh, oh,
anyway,
Glenn Turman? Is this
yeah, I think that's his name. He did a great job. But he had in the 40s, I didn't know this either. Everyone knows about the March on Washington 1963. A. Philip Randolph had planned two previous marches, but had called them off. So basically, he would play a game of chicken. He would say, we're going to go march 100,000 of us in DC if you don't desegregate the military, if you don't offer jobs to Black people within the federal government.
Mhm,
And every time he would get really close to having the march, and then the government would concede to whatever he asked for. And so he would call off the march.
mhm,
And every time he would call off the march, people would be upset. They were like, we still want to do the march, including Bayard Rustin, who was at this time had met A. Philip Randolph, who was a labor leader And he mentioned he wanted to do these marches to show civil disobedience as a means of striking at Jim Crow. At this time, like I mentioned, Bayard Rustin's getting Black folks involved into the anti-war movement, but there was also this thing that you could do at this time. You were a conscientious objector. Basically, if I get drafted to the war, I'm objecting because of my religion. I think that was really the main way you could get out of it, is to be a conscientious objector. And if you were a Quaker, you qualified. So what they would do if you were a conscientious objector and you were drafted into the war, they would send you into a what's called a CPS camp. So basically, like, you don't have to go to war, but you got to go to this camp. And if you don't go to the camp, then you go to prison.
Oh.
So at first, he submitted this conscientious objector thing. It was approved, and then I think that December, end of 1943, he received a summons to, all right, you don't have to go fight, but you have to go to this camp they were basically work camps. They didn't have enough food. It wasn't an ideal situation. It wasn't as bad as prison, but it also wasn't great. And then he was like, you know what? On second thought, I don't want to go to the camp either. And so he didn't show up. So then you get marked as a delinquent and then you can get arrested. So for the second time in his life, he's arrested January 12th, 1944, and he was assigned to 3 years in prison. It becomes news, it's a whole thing. They put all the details in his hometown newspaper, and a lot of people in his family were embarrassed, but not his mother, she's my favorite person. His mom said, she basically said, I don't want him to be in prison, but he has to follow the dictates of his conscience. She's a good Quaker. She was just like, look, he doesn't want to go to war. He doesn't want to go to this camp. He's just following what he believes to be true. So, yet again, he's in trouble with the law. What's so funny about this is what I love about his mom is when I was at Howard 5 years ago, I don't know, 20 years ago, um, I remember there was a women's rights march. This is how long ago this was. Hillary Clinton was, I wanna say she was a senator, and it was just a women's rights march, and I went, it was all over the news. And I remember my mom called me, and she was like, "You're not down that march, are you?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm at the march." And she was like, if you are at a march when you should be in class, I'm not bailing you out. So my mom is not a Quaker.
No,
She
not
was like, "Get your tail to class. You are up there to go to school. You are not up there to be in a march."
you
Thankfully, I
was
didn't
an
get arrested.
educator, okay?
And it wasn't even a protest. It was just women's rights march, whatever. I love my mother so much, but also shout out to Ma Rustin, who was down for the cause. So before he goes to prison, he spends his first 10 days in jail and he is turned from jump. Like from jump, he's like an activist. He starts protesting that the dining hall is segregated. So they put him in solitary. So the whole time he's in prison, which ends up being 28 months, because he's kind of famous at this point. Not famous, but he's like well known and he has people on the outside that are advocating for him.
Yeah.
They don't do anything too crazy to him, but he keeps getting moved from prison to prison because every prison he goes to, he starting like a little mini revolution. Like he gets everybody, and this is the thing too. At that time, 1 in 5 prisoners were there for evading the draft. So
Right.
there were a lot of people in prison who were like, I just don't want to go to war.
Yeah.
So he would get all those people together, and they would be protesting the food. They would protest the segregation. He'd get them singing freedom songs and just not following orders, just nothing crazy violence, but he just was like, "I don't wanna do what y'all tell me to do, and Imma have all my people with me, and Imma turn everybody in here into a rabble-rouser." So there's all these letters of corrections officers writing to the warden like, "What can we do?" And he would just move him somewhere else. He would just do it there. No matter that's what he did the whole time.
Yeah.
He did get beaten pretty bad once with a broom handle, and he just covered his head and said, "You can't hurt me," even as they're beating the brakes off of him. But then all the other people start doing it. They start beating the other people, and they all do the same thing. These people were serious. Now, before he had gone to prison, he met his boyfriend, this guy named Davis Platt.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know if he's still alive. I know he was alive for the documentary that was done a few years ago. The thing that's interesting about Bayard Rustin is all of his boots are still alive right now. And so how is that possible? He liked young men. So he was he was 31 when he met 19-year-old Davis Platt. And
You said
this dude,
it keeps me young.
I mean, it's legal, I guess. Sure. He loved young white men specifically, like, that
Yeah.
was his bag.
Yeah.
That was why, and this is not, like, a real spoiler, but, that was one of my issues with the Rustin movie is he has a black boyfriend in there. I'm like, "I ain't never heard of Bayard Rustin having a black boyfriend." He just loved young white men, like, that was his type.
And it made no sense because Coleman is married to a Hispanic white man, so I was just like, "It's on brand, guys. Keep it going."
I feel like they cast people that do that in roles of people that do that. Like, it's the thing. Uh, I yeah. But Coleman Domingo's story of how he met his boo is very sweet.
Oh,
I've
it's
heard it a
fan
million times.
I love it.
It's such a good story. For those of you guys don't know, you should look it up and let him tell it to you. But basically, he saw I was on CVS or
Yes.
Walgreens, some pharmacy. They saw each other. They locked eyes. They had a moment, but they didn't exchange information. Then Colm Domingo saw him on Misconnections. He was describing him. They connected and they've been together ever since.
Mhm.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he met this guy, 19-year-old Dave, while he was going to college campuses talking about pacifism.
Mhm.
They fell in love. Byard was a little bit of a playboy. He was never very faithful, but Davis was like a pretty serious-ish relationship for him. And while he's in jail, they write each other letters. Never write anything romantic in their prison letters, but I mean, they are definitely a couple. And Davis comes to visit him, and everyone in the prison is like, "Who is this like very handsome white man coming to see you?" And, I think people in the prison kind of figured out what his deal was. He also got written up in prison for being very affectionate with other prisoners. So he had some booze in prison as well, as it turns out. But Davis was his main. So Platt visited him, gave him a mandolin, an instrument so he could play music. And he got out and they were back together and he immediately began a lecture circuit in violation of his parole, which said you cannot leave New York State. His parole officer issued a warrant for his arrest, but the board of parole was just like, "What's the point? Just close the case. We don't care. We're just what's the point of making this man go back to it?" So anyway, I love that for him.
Yes.
When I was reading this, I was like, "Wow, they are pretty lenient on this black man." This is at a time when black people are getting lynched. There's a warrant out for this man's arrest, and he's let go. So then he goes to India in 1948 to learn about nonviolent civil resistance. And in 1953, pretty horrible thing happens. He was arrested for engaging in sexual activity in a parked car with two other men in Pasadena. At that time, it was called sexual perversion. And he had to serve 60 days in jail. This is where now there's no longer a suspicion that this guy is gay. This is when everyone knows this is the kind of time he's on. So this ends up becoming an issue for him in the future as he does other things. People keep bringing this up. "Well, remember when you were in Pasadena and you were doing this thing?" And this is the first time he was arrested for being him. Well, I don't wanna say I mean, I don't know what he was doing in the car.
We know what he was doing in the car.
I mean, and
Please.
there's 2 other guys. I don't wanna first of all, do whatever you wanna do. I mean, I also feel like think about it, like, when you're a teenager and you're trying to be messy. You don't have a house. That's why teenagers act up in cars. I'm guessing that they were in a car because I don't know what their other options were. I don't know what was going on. I don't know. I have no other details. But this was the first time he was arrested for his sexuality. And the reason why I hesitated is because it wasn't because he was gay. It was probably because he was doing gay things in a car visibly. But I mean, I don't know that they would have done that if it was with women. I don't know. So
That is a great question that we'll never know the answer to, but that is a great question.
if so, I know lots of people that should have been arrested.
Oh.
I'm not saying myself. I would never.
Oh.
But everybody else, everybody else,
That
whatever y'all are doing. A car, my God. Freedom Park, that's crazy.
not wait a minute, wait, not specifics.
That's crazy. Who would do that? So a few years after that, he ends up becoming a big brother to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He's like, "Look, I've been to India. I'm on game. I got it. Let me teach you how to do your boycotts." So this is around the time of the Birmingham Bus Boycott.
Mhm.
He coached MLK up. And in fact, this is a somewhat famous story about him. When he went to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's house, there were all these armed men around, to protect his house.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't just roll up on him like that.
of course.
And Bayard Rustin was like, "That's silly. If you really want to be about nonviolence, why do you have all these armed guys around your house? You don't need any guns. Put that away." And allegedly, he convinced him to get rid of some of that stuff. So, was that a good idea?
But that man
I don't know.
clearly had a lot of persuasion because it seems like everybody was under his spell.
I mean, but even this is why I think everyone, and I should have said this earlier, there's 3 resources that I use for this. The one is a book called Lost Prophet: The Life and Times of Bayard Rustin by John D'Amelio. It was a very well-researched, very good book. There's a documentary called Brother Outsider: The Life of Bayard Rustin, and it's on Netflix right now. And then, of course, there's the dramatized movie, Rustin. I recommend you watch that one last because it's the least historically accurate,
Yeah.
and I don't want you to misinterpret what happened, but it's actually a really good portrayal of that specific time of him planning for the march.
Yeah.
So, all 3. The reason I brought that up is because in the movie, he just rolls up to Martin Luther King's house and he just opens the door and I was like, "Could you do that? Could you just walk up to Martin Luther King's house and karate?" And it's like, "Oh, Bayard, good to see you. Can you?" I don't know. But anyway, if you watch the documentary, you will be under his spell too. You can see his charisma.
Okay.
He had it. Malcolm X
Yeah.
had it.
Yeah.
Listen, the first time I saw a clip of Malcolm X, I was like, "Assalamu alaikum. I'm in. Sign me up." What I gotta do? He was very convincing.
And
In
you talked
fact,
about with how he looks.
I wasn't a Malcolm X's teeth were a little not my favorite, but aside from that,
Oh God.
I have a teeth thing. I have a teeth thing. And Bayard Rustin also, he had a teeth situation as well. Maybe
Exactly.
maybe dental care just was not on the up and up at the time.
They were
Maybe it's
fighting in the streets. They was getting to it. The boys was on the boots on the ground. They didn't have time to go to the dentist.
we need to make time. We need to
Well,
make
who wants to go
time.
to the dentist if the dentist might be, messing up your teeth?
I guess so. You know what? Imma let you rock.
These are thoughts. These are thoughts.
Imma let you rock. Yeah, Imma let you rock. So, anyway, yeah, he coached him up. He was working and Bayard Rustin started working with Dr. King. They became buddies,
Mhm,
started working with him on the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
mhm.
Then we got our hater coming in the room, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. Look him up. Very handsome man, politician, but very much a hater.
Mm.
Hater energy. And he was trying to make moves in the Democratic space, and he didn't want there to be a march. He didn't want to cause a lot of trouble. And so he didn't like Bayard Rustin's turn up energy. And so he told Martin Luther King, he said, if you don't cancel this march that you and Bayard Rustin are trying to plan, then I'm going to tell everybody that y'all are having an affair. He just made that up.
That
Just
the
made it up.
real blackmail.
Yeah. And so they ended up canceling it. And then Bayard Rustin resigned from the SCLC so that, he could protect Martin Luther King's legacy, which there's, some reporting that like their relationship was really harmed after that. I don't know if how the movie dramatizes it is correct, but I do think that was a pain point for him. He thought Martin Luther King would go to bat for him and be like, I don't care about these rumors, but like, you know, that is kind of scary. So anyway, fast forward, we've learned about all these other attempts at marches. We've learned about all this other work that he's done, all his arrest, these rumors about his behavior. And then we finally lead up to the March on Washington, which Bayard Rustin and A. Philip Randolph essentially were planning and pitching. Roy Wilkins, who was the head of the NAACP at the time, the chairman, did not want to do the march. Adam Clayton Powell, again, did not want to do the march. A lot of people did not want this march to happen. They felt like, you guys, this is going, and the same thing I think would happen today. Why don't we just try and negotiate? Why don't we just try to talk to these people? Kennedy's a good guy. Why are we doing march? And A. Philip Randolph, who was seen as
Mhm,
like that guy. He was the elder statesman. He was the oldest of them all. He was just like, we're going to move forward.
mhm,
And either you're with us or you're not with us. And eventually everyone came on board.
mhm,
So Roy Wilkins initially said, okay, we'll do the march, but Bayard Rustin can't be the director. He
mhm,
can't be in charge because that's going to throw everything off. And so A. Philip Randolph is like, all right, cool. He's not going to be the director. I'll be the director. Bayard Rustin, you're my deputy director. And then he actually just did everything. So it was just like in name, A. Philip Randolph was at the head, but Bayard Rustin was really the person that apparently he was this master organizer and planner. I would hate to see what he could do with social media. Like he would just, but everyone agreed there is no one that can get 100,000 people to this place and get it funded besides Bayard. He has all these decades of experience organizing. And so he starts getting going. They get to it. Again, the movie Rustin does a great job of telling this part of the story. But 3 weeks before the march is scheduled to happen, Strom Thurmond, our favorite senator from South Carolina. I've actually met Strom Thurmond. I met him when I was in high school. I was in this program where you got to meet your senator. You were in this leadership program and you got to meet your senator. And most people's senator doesn't actually show up. You meet their aide. But my actual senator, Strom Thurmond, who was like, looked to be 105. He was probably 99. I don't know. He actually showed up and very deaf. He could not hear. I remember he was like, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "Spartanburg County." And he's like, "Huh?" His aide had to yell in his ear, "Spartanburg County." And he's like, "Oh, Sparkle City." And he shook my hand. But in retrospect, I probably should have punched him in the face.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I should have punched him in the face. I mean, I knew he was like a racist, but I didn't. I was a child. I was in high
I
school.
mean, of course. I mean, yeah, you're right. But the research now indicates.
Yeah. I remember my high school teacher told me he was I tell people this all the time, so people are probably tired of me saying this, but my high school teacher told me he was the best senator in history, and she was his hugest fan. And I remember I told my mom that, and she was like, he has a black daughter, right? And I was like, "What?" And I told my teacher, and she was so offended. And she was like, "How dare you say something like that?" Fast forward a few years later, he dies. His daughter, his black ASS daughter, writes a book detailing how he raped her mom when her mom was 15. And yeah, he paid for her education, fully admitted that he was her dad. Also, she looks like Strom Thurmond with caramel skin. She has his exact face. If you Google Strom Thurmond's daughter, black daughter, it is Strom Thurmond with hair. No offense to her. May she rest in peace. Anyway, Strom Thurmond, this racist, he attacks the march because he says the organized sex pervert, he's a communist. Black people are fine. They're doing well. Black people here, they've got refrigerators, they've got cars, they are living their best life. What they want to march for? And again, people are like, we got to get Bayard Rustin, not associated with this event. People that are starting to attack the march. And Martin Luther King stood 10 toes down. He was like, nah, he's not a communist. He's a good guy. He's the man for the job. And as we all know, the rest is history. The march proceeded. It was the largest march to date, as far as size. There was not a single fight. It was completely peaceful. I think they planned for 100,000 people, and there was anywhere from 200 to 250,000 people there.
Mm.
It all just went off without a hitch. It was beautiful.
No, no.
I don't know. I wish I was there.
Yeah, that was a moment in history for sure.
Yeah. Do you know anyone who was there? Anyone in your family that was maybe there? I don't know.
No, I do. I wish that was a question. I mean, the person that I would, well, not to say the person that I would ask, but because my grandparents are of the age that they would probably know, but my great grandmother lived to be 99, and I wish now looking back, there were certain things, but
And
I was
asked her.
young then. I could have the opportunity to ask her.
Well, I did ask my grandmother, and she was like, I was busy.
Not she was busy.
But she was. She had 11 kids.
Yes,
Like, she couldn't go to a march. What was I thinking?
that's true.
I remember I was so disappointed. I was like, "Grandma, oh, yeah, you were very much alive, and you were, like, 40 years old at the time of the march. Did you go to the march?" She was like, "No, I was at work
She said,
raising these
I had to
kids."
make meals and things for these children.
I was like, "Oh, my bad." I was so disappointed. Anyway, so the march happened. Now he's famous. He actually spoke at the march briefly. And after that, he continues with civil rights work. He kind of pivoted at that point, though, from being like this hands on protester, getting beat up, getting arrested, turning up everywhere. He kind of pivoted to, and some people will say negatively, some people, he gets a lot of criticism for this period in his life. He started to say, he started to be a lot more pragmatic, a lot more practical, and say, okay, we have got to be reasonable. and both political parties suck. We got to figure out which one sucks less and go with that one. He moved away from, this is right around when the Vietnam War starts,
Okay.
and people are expecting him to be this huge anti war guy. And he was like, yeah, I don't think we should be in Vietnam, but I'm not putting my energy into that right now. I'm just focusing on what's happening here in the United States. And people were really disappointed. You're the anti war guy. And now you're like, Mm, I don't know. I mean, I'm not into it, but y'all got it. And so, yeah, he went to a Senate hearing in 1967 and they asked him about it. And he was just like, I'm just focused on the rights of the people here. And his interest in Vietnam was more so about, well, I don't like that Black people are disproportionately being killed in Vietnam. Let's talk about that. He had a very Black lens from there moving forward. Now, that is a generous interpretation of events.
Yeah.
Other people say because he then started working for the A. Philip Randolph Institute, which was funded by a labor group and who was kind of they weren't once you have like you can't just say whatever you want to say. And so they believe that was the real reason that he wasn't super opposed because he didn't want to mess up his check or mess with his money.
Mhm.
Honestly, and as someone who had been arrested several times, the last time he got arrested was, when he was having the relations in the car.
Eh,
Maybe he was like, I don't want to go through that again.
yeah.
I don't know. He spoke at the sanitation workers strike in Memphis in 1968.
Mhm.
He is the one who encouraged Martin Luther King to go to Memphis to support that strike, which is kind of sad because the first time Martin Luther King went in March, it was not organized. It was a riot, it was chaotic, and it started, it got violent. And then Bayard Rustin was like, we have to go back again, and this time we'll plan better. And that's when Martin Luther King was assassinated. So he did I mean, I hope he doesn't hold himself accountable for the reason why that happened, but, he did organize a memorial march that happened right afterwards and where Coretta Scott King and her kids, they marched. They were, "We're gonna continue marching even though my husband was killed and, for this cause," and so he helped organize that very peaceful march. So, what do you think starts to happen? Where do you think Black people's head is at? Like, as we get out of the civil rights movement, as we get into the 70s, what are the vibes? Are we still on this peaceful, we shall overcome? Where are we at after that?
Yeah. In my mind, I kind of feel like it's a toss up. Like we're still kind of there because we still have the anger, but then we're also like, it's getting better. So should we calm down? Like, should we slow down? You know what I mean? I feel like it's a
This is when we start turning up. This is when the Black Power, the Black Panthers,
yeah.
this is when Stokely Carmichael and all these people start following police officers with long barrel shotguns and saying like,
Well, I
"What
mean,
up?"
it's yeah, and it's post MLK too. So I mean, obviously people are
Yeah,
enraged. Yeah.
yeah, people are mad.
Yeah.
Fired, not feeling it. What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing? He was just like, and he was always, maybe because he had all these young white boyfriends. I don't know. He at
Does
this
not have it.
point is like probably
Yeah.
he is like, we need to be getting along with the white people. I don't want to do this separatist stuff. He actually said, let me see where I put this in my notes. He actually said Black power is just a psychological purgative, whatever that means. He was like, it's not a real thing. There's no such thing as Black power. He was like, Black people have guns and they have tanks. You don't have any power. Stop wasting your time. He was kind of a wet blanket.
I'm curious to know like where his shift. Like it could have been partly that, but I don't know if it's like he had been doing it for so long that maybe
Yeah.
tired.
Yeah. You nailed it. So that is actually exactly what one of his friends said. One of his friends said he was tired of doing things the hard way.
Yeah.
And he finally was financially okay. He was safe. He had a relationship. Now, that one with the 19-year-old that lasted for a few years. His last 10 years of his life, he's with another guy who is alive right now. His name is Walter, which is wild. Um, his name is Walter Nagel. When he met Bayard Rustin, Bayard was 65 and Walter was 28.
Oh, wow.
So there's that.
He definitely left them young, like really young. He literally just doubled the 19-year-old's age. So you were okay. Wow.
He was, yeah, 37 age 37-year age difference.
Wow.
I kept seeing this stuff and it was like, Walter, Bayard Rustin's partner, and recently, and I'm like, how is this man still alive? Oh, because he was a child when they met. Okay.
So how old is Walter now?
He is, let's see, he was born in, I mean, he's like 70 something, but
Okay,
he looks like he's in fine health. Let me see.
of course he is.
He is 77.
Oh yeah, he kicking.
Even this picture of oh my god, this is crazy. This picture of him, I'm gonna share this for everyone. Oh, there's a picture of Walter Nagel wearing these like short shorts and senior elderly Bayard Rustin.
I think I saw the picture. Was Walter bald?
Not in this picture,
Oh,
no. They are an interesting
match.
there's this one too. Yeah, he's
Oh,
wearing
I
the
saw
same.
this one. I did see that picture.
No, the one I saw that I was talking about was these short shorts.
With go over to the other way. Oh yes, they're very short. And he like a specific white man. Like it's a specific.
Yeah, he has a specific type.
Yeah.
He has a specific type. So anyway, he has a comfortable life. I got my man, I got my, physical safety. I'm not getting arrested. This is just what I'm doing right now. So his friend said exactly what you said. He was just like, I'm just tired of fighting. I want to support the cause, but I want to do it in the least problematic way as possible. In 1975, he founded the Black Americans to Support Israel Committee.
Mhm.
Um, he was a huge fan of Israel for whatever reason. Uh, which didn't make him too many friends, but he went to a lot of countries. He would travel to Cambodia, to Thailand, just advocating for peace and justice. That was his thing. He was opposed to, and this is where people started saying he was a conservative. He was opposed to affirmative action and quota because he was just like, everyone needs to get there on their own merit. So,
Hmm.
I mean, he's a complicated person. I think also some people, not me. I feel like the older I get, the more further left I get. Like, the older I get, the more I'm just like, childcare should be free. The more I'm just like
Yes.
the more I'm just like a mom Donnie kinda gal.
What were you
But some
like?
people yeah, some people as they get older, they get more conservative, I think. And I don't know if he probably wouldn't describe himself as conservative, but he just started to be a lot more pragmatic. So I think that's part of the reason why the average person doesn't know who he is,
Mhm.
because he didn't have this clean linear story of like civil rights activists who continued to engage in civil rights for the rest of towards the end of his life, he started doing things like he was having debates with he had a really intense debate with Malcolm X. He had one with Stokely Carmichael where he was saying, "You guys, we got to negotiate with these people. We don't need to be fighting people all the time." And he was a huge advocate for the Jewish, I wouldn't say for Jewish people, but I would say for the Israel, Jewish and Israel, very different things. He was a huge advocate for the state of Israel being able to carve out their own space for Jewish people. So that didn't really win him any favors. But he says that he got that from his grandmother. His grandmother, the Jewish people's liberation, was very resonant for her.
Mm.
So, yeah. So that's it. I mean, he died at 75, so he lived pretty long. And he died, I think, of complications from a surgery. But there's lots of things named after him. His hometown high school is named after him. Of course, there's the movies. There are lots of gay institutions that are named for him. And his partner of 10 years, by the way, same sex marriage wasn't a thing when they were together. So he legally adopted him so that when he passed, Walter would inherit whatever he had. But yeah, Walter's still alive and telling the story of Bayard Rustin. By the way, the Rustin movie was produced by Barack and Michelle Obama. I didn't know that.
Which I love.
Shout out. So what are your thoughts this Pride Month about Bayard Rustin?
Well, I think it is great that we have such a unique and nuanced and prolific figure that we're putting a spotlight on and obviously learning more about because I think that is a part of the LGBTQIA experience is that it's very layered, it's very nuanced, it is not linear. We all have very different journeys. Some of us are very supported, some of us are not, and we're all trying to be loved and, whatever that looks like for each of us,
Mhm.
whatever
Yeah.
our story, whatever book chapter we're on, we're working on it. And
Yeah.
it's a ever evolving process, I think. So
Yeah, and growing up, I didn't really know any leaders who were openly gay. I didn't remember learning about them. I
Mhm.
wouldn't say I didn't know them, I just didn't know that they like, who they were. I didn't know about Bayard Rustin. I can't think of anyone as a child that I was taught about who also was a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and that erasure it's horrifying. It's horrible, horrifying, I don't know if that's the right word, but
It's problematic.
it's malicious, actually, because it erases a very important part of how we came to be the country that we are. When you take away the contributions, even when you think about the Black church, like there really is no Black church without the LGBTQ plus community, despite the fact that the Black church has historically treated that community really poorly.
Yeah.
But you don't have certainly not the music. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't have many of the traditions of the Black church without the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yeah.
So hopeful that we can elevate these stories year round, not just during Pride Month. And I will get myself to a drag ball soon in honor of Bayard Rustin.
And you should.
Um, okay. We always end with what is something that you are listening to or reading or watching that you want to share with other people, that you want to recommend to other people?
I think my current thing that I make it, I'm driving a lot in the car, and I always find myself listening and watching, which don't do that, don't watch. But of course, if you have the car mount, I find myself watching Baby This Is Kiki Palmer's podcast. Listen, I need to hear.
Listen to Kiki Palmer.
Yes, but it's on YouTube, so you can put it on the Safari, play it because every episode is at least about 50 minutes or more. And
Okay.
I will say one episode that you should specifically start with is her
Ooh.
episode with Niecy Nash. That episode
Oh,
is
yeah.
incredible. Incredible.
I haven't seen the whole thing, I've seen clips of it, and I isn't Niecy didn't she talk about how Niecy Nash reached out to her when, Keke Palmer was going the whole thing with the father of her child? Like, she just reaches out to people
Which is just in general. Like in general, like Niecy just
she
had
just does
that.
that.
Mhm.
She's like everybody's auntie.
And it's crazy because something I did not know about Niecy was that her brother was murdered in high school.
Okay, I did listen to this episode because that was a good you're right, that is a really good episode.
It's phenomenal.
Um,
I
she
watched
is
it
phenomenal. Her story, just how she
and they
but
do
I remember she talked about when her now wife, their story, and
yeah,
about how they met
yeah.
and how I think she said they could come over and, like, cuddle and watch TV or something.
Well, it was kinda like Niecy didn't even see her that way.
Yeah, she didn't see her that way.
Niecy talks about, like, she gets a feeling in her body where her stomach
Yes,
got hot,
yes,
right?
yes, that's
And she
right.
said her stomach got hot in this particular instance with Jessica, who's
Yes,
our partner, and, she was just like, "This only happens with boys."
yes, that's right, that's right, that's right, that's right.
So that I think that
Oh.
episode is a phenomenal episode for people to watch. Obviously, some of the more recent, which that one is recent, but the recent season, probably some of the notable ones are Michelle Obama, obviously.
Mhm.
What's the guy Sean from Hot Ones, who everybody wants her to
Oh,
date,
yeah.
and then currently, I think the episode with Russell Wilson and Sierra came out 2 days ago. So
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I've seen clips of her and the Wings guy,
yeah,
Sean, and
it was a good episode.
I like, on the one hand, I love their chemistry, and I think they're very cute together, but I also feel like everybody calm down. Everybody calm down. If they got each other's number. If they wanna do it, they do it, but this is just too much public pressure on the 2 of them to be
I
a
know,
couple.
I know.
It's kind of stressful for me.
Well, it's the chemistry, and I think people the the thing is, Kiki is so charismatic herself, but I also think people want Kiki to be happy, especially
Yeah,
after the situation with
yeah.
her son's father. And so it's like, you just want people to win. And I'm gonna say this. I am a person that believes that with love, especially when it pertains to black women, people love to give black women a lot of grief when they get with a white man. However, I am a strong proponent that if she's being courted, treated, and loved well and properly,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't care who it's by.
I will say this, most of the time, when I see Black men with non-Black women, it is a pattern for them. Like, that's just what they're like. It's like Buyer. That's just their type. He just
Yeah.
likes young white men. I have a responsibility as a mother of 3 Black boys. They've been at every Pride March that has happened since they've been alive, but it is my responsibility to make sure that they are respecting and caring for the Black women in life, whether they love them in that way or not. But you
Make
need to be
space
an
for the
advocate.
Black queens.
Come on, man. Like, respect all women, but the ones that look like your mama,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. I like her. I like her. I need to listen to it more. Okay. Well, thank you, Brandon, for joining us today. If someone wants to hire you, where should they do? Where should they go?
You can go to my website, which is www.brandongrate, like a steel grate in a road.
That's right. GRATE.
.com, and it's not gate, it's great, because some people for some odd reason can't see the R. I don't know what's happening. Or they can go to my Instagram, which is my first name Brandon, last name Grate, steel
Underscore.
underscore. Yes.
And I recommend you all go to that Instagram just for funsies because it's beautiful. And the red cape, I was just looking at that like, oh, luxury.
Thanks. Yeah, that was my, I love a cape moment.
Yes, we love a cape moment. All right, thank you all. Thank you all for listening. Please like, please subscribe, please share, please tell a friend, and we will see you next time. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.